Good morning, and welcome to episode 63 of the Driller Newscast, a weekly update on the news and stories impacting the drilling and water industry. I'm your host, Brock Yordy. This week in the news, we'll cover the letter from California, Arizona, and Nevada to the Department of Interior agreeing to reduced water use from the Colorado River. It's about time. For our feature, we'll have an interview with Matt McAnally of Innov8 Drilling, a Cathodic drilling company in Texas. Matt is 33 years old and about to purchase his fifth rig as owner and president. So throw out that whole concept that the younger generations don't want to work hard. This dude is working hard with a lot of great people. But before we start this week's newscast, I want to take a moment for us to honor America's fallen on this Memorial Day. Harry S. Truman, our debt to the heroic men and valiant women in the service of our country can never be repaid. They have earned our undying gratitude. America will never forget their sacrifices. And I want to talk today about the sacrifices made in Ukraine, defending those people. And within 2023, we've had three brave men give their all in defending that freedom. I'm going to start with Edward Wilton, 22 years old, from Mariana, Florida, United States Army. He was killed April 7th while defending the key city of Bakhmut in eastern Ukraine. He left to fight the Russian invaders April 2022. Edward had Ukrainian roots. Next, United States Marine Grady Kerpasi. He went out to train soldiers, but due to the intensity of the war and the need for combat experienced leaders, Captain Grady ended up leading a squad into battle. According to the United States Marine Corps, Kerpasi left a computer programming career at age 29 to enlist just 2 months after the 9/11 attack. Over the course of his 20-year service, he was deployed to Iraq 3 times and was awarded many commendations, including a Purple Heart. In January, former Navy SEAL Daniel W. Swift died in Dnipro. It has been reported that 8 Americans have fallen defending Ukraine. Why do we talk about this? Because a big chunk of defending Ukraine has to do with the critical component of Russia's invasion, which is opening up water supplies for Crimea and to control the Donbass region's watershed. This is a quote from John F. Kennedy. "Let every nation know, whether it wishes us well or ill, that we shall pay any price, bear any burden, meet any hardship, support any friend, oppose any foe to assure the survival and the success of liberty." Over 7,000 Americans have perished during the war on terror as servicemen and airmen in combat and abroad. To their families, thank you for their sacrifice. And to them, thank you for defending our freedom. For this week's safety topic, it's time to get everybody refocused. We just had a long weekend, and that's, I'm assuming, most of you all are listening to this on Tuesday after Memorial Day, though it dropped on Memorial Day. It's a good weekend to honor the fallen and reset. And now we have a mad dash to the 4th of July holiday weekend. So let's grab some water. Let's circle everybody up. Let's start taking in how everybody's feeling. I'm sure we're tired. I'm sure many people stayed out on the lake as long as they could on Monday afternoon into evening. So what do we need? We need to get hydrated. We need to be thinking about that we can't just drink Monsters and Gatorades, that we need water. Our body needs water on top of having good electrolytes. We need to start thinking about heat and making sure we have that NIOSH OSHA heat index app, and that we're thinking about heat and extreme weather. What do we have for lightning detection? And then again, coming out of this long weekend, possibly fatigued, how are we operating? Let's outline our tasks. Let's think about what's important, and let's stay safe so that we can continue many more great weekends on the lake or on the golf course or on the range or wherever you go. This is just one of many. With the country open back up and us able to celebrate, let's be smart. So leaders, crew, let's think about if somebody's not focused, let's say stop. If it seems like a task is not going the way it is, let's circle up. And as the heat increases, you go to the cooler to grab a bottle of water, grab one for everybody, because we need to stay hydrated. Be safe out there. For this week in the news, of course, we're still talking Colorado Compact. It's a big topic. 40 million Americans count on that water. We have hydroelectricity. We have 30 tribal nations that count on this water. And finally, last Monday, Arizona, California, and Nevada released a letter agreeing to a path to stabilize water use from the Colorado River. And it starts with this. Dear Secretary Haaland, for months, Basin state water officials have been in discussions with representatives from the United States Department of Interior and the Bureau of Reclamation to develop a path forward for stabilizing the Colorado River system. We're pleased to write in support of the proposal submitted by the lower basin states to bolster the Colorado River system with 3 million acre feet of conserved water through 2026. The product of this collaboration is measurable, verifiable, and enforceable water conservation volumes that provide immediate and substantial support for the Colorado River. The proposal's emphasis on early and large contribution reductions reduces the risk of Lake Mead and Lake Powell declining to critically low elevations, and is accomplished through voluntary agreements with a diverse range of Arizona, California, and Nevada water users that include tribes, cities, and agriculture. We've been informed that under almost all modeling conditions, the lower basin states consensus proposal would result in greater protections for Lake Mead and Lake Powell than either of the alternatives analyzed in the draft environmental impact statement. The consensus proposal would increase storage in Lake Mead and protect higher elevations than were proposed in that impact statement. Implementation of the proposal will also enable the basin states, in collaboration with Reclamation, to pivot to discussions on post-2026 operations that will address the impact of climate change on the system's water supply availability and the existing overallocation of water. We urge you to quickly suspend the draft environmental impact statement and commerce with the analysis of the lower basin states consensus proposal. We are pleased and encouraged by the successful collaboration. We thank the Arizona, California, and Nevada representatives and the members of the U.S. Department of Interior and the Bureau of Reclamation teams involved with the basin discussions, as well as the contributing water users. While much work remains, we are hopeful the momentum from this lower basin state proposal will extend into the upcoming conversations regarding the long-term operation of the system. Signed, Governor Hobbs, Governor Newsom, Governor Lombardo. I think this is a great first start to this. Here's one thing that I want us to all think about. It starts with water conservation of the tribes, cities, and agriculture. with California being a senior water right holder. 3 million acre feet is a great start, but it doesn't count for what Texas and New Mexico need and the 1.5 million acre feet we promise California. And first and foremost, the tribes should be the least water right user to have to reduce water because it's already a big sacrifice, as we see from the Navajo Nation versus the United States, the Navajo Nation versus Arizona, as long with the other tribes that are working their hardest to see how they can conserve. So big ag, it's still time to figure out how we work smarter. And there's USDA money out there. And in this letter, they got $1.2 billion to work at water conservation and sustainability, not to mention what California is trying to do in capturing 1 million acre feet. The last thing that really scares me as you hear these stories through the news right now is they say 1 acre feet feeds 2 households a year in the West. And that's saying that 2 households require 326,000 gallons. And if we divide that by 365 days of usage, that's 400 plus gallons a day. I think we really, really, really need to consider our city's water usage on top of big ag and everything else. But if our tribes are going to sustain and continue to build agriculture and do all that they need to do to thrive in a sovereign nation that was presented to them and agreed upon, and they moved to there, we got to do better. For this week's feature, we're going to feature a professional, Matt McAnally of Innov8 Drilling in Texas. He's a Cathodic driller, and he decided, in his early 30s to shift gears and go ahead and start his own company and get a rig and then continue to buy rigs as work scaled up. And I think this is a perfect segue into what we're talking about with workforce development. And every time I hear that frustrating phrase, this generation doesn't want to work anymore. And of course, you're going to learn Matt's been in the industry many years, but the team he's building around him has not. And we can do this. There's 3,800,000 high school graduates that have just been let out into the world that are looking for purpose. And of course, some of them are going to college, but it's not like the 65 to 70% that we've seen in the past. There is Department of Energy, workforce development money, there's apprenticeship money, and the United States Department of Agriculture has money all outlined. And we're going to continue this discussion, but I think this is a great starter to this, having this discussion with Matt about Innov8 Drilling. I hope you enjoy. For this week's featured professional, I'm going to send it out to Texas, to the Cathodic drilling industry. And this industry is incredibly small. And so I met Matt at a drilling school in Enid, Oklahoma, and had worked alongside him in some different stuff. And we caught up a few weeks ago. And it was just a heck of a story that I think we all need to hear. Matt, go ahead and introduce yourself.
All right, I'm Matt McAnally, president of Innov8 Drilling Services. We're based here out of El Campo, Texas. Like Brock was saying, I met Brock back at a little drilling mud school a couple years ago, and since then we've been in communication here and there. But other than that, that's basically it. I worked for a big corporation. We had rigs all over the U.S. We're basically worldwide doing cathodics. such a small industry, and it's great to kind of talk about how the upcome of Innov8.
Yeah, so that's it is a small industry, and we all get busy and we end up running into each other or texting on a project, or helping one another out. And first and foremost, Matt, how did you get into drilling? How did drilling get into your blood?
So I've been around the drilling industry, but not doing like cathodic. So I was always a rig welder by trade. I worked for a big corporation where we build big vessels for these substations and stuff like that. So I went to work for a drilling outfit out of Houston where I was basically just a rig welder. We would go out and repair the rigs, put the bell casing, the bell heads on. Um, got laid off from that because everything slowed down. Went to a different trade doing mechanical stuff for a big heavy equipment manufacturer. Wasn't my itch. Ended up getting an offer to go work for this cathodic protection company out of Houston, and started from the very bottom on a shoveling cuttings, and then worked my way up to a driller position, and then from there off to management. So um, it's definitely been a journey over the past 9 years.
Many of the folks out there that listen are in the water well and geothermal, and we don't talk a lot about cathodic because there's a lot of prerequisites, compared to going and doing a residential water well. There's qualifications and expectations, and these big pipelines, as we put in deep well anode beds on these pipelines, they have lots of safety going on. Would you talk about like the difference between a typical rig job to now the expectations of your company and safety and like operators qualifications?
Yeah, so safety is a big key in our industry, especially because we're working around a lot of high pressure lines. There's a lot of unknowns in the area versus like if you pull up to do a residential water well, you kind of have a general idea that the water line is going to be in a certain area. You got your little residential gas line running to the house, or there's a propane line out there. In our industry, there's so many unknowns. You could be drilling on a right of way and there's 12 pipelines in that area, and you might have a 6-inch gap between each line, for you to drill from, or a foot, it just depends. Or you got different scenarios where they have boring and you might find a line 27 feet deep, you know. So yeah, safety comes into a huge factor, especially in our industry. All the site specifics that we have to go through before prior to entering a location, or OQing our guys before we arrive on location.
So you said earlier, president of Innov8 Drilling Services. When I worked with you, you were we were down in Enid talking about drill rigs and whatnot. And I know you headed out west for a while and worked in California. How old are you, Matt?
33.
Okay, 33. And this is what's insanely cool about our conversation. How many rigs you got right now?
4 rigs currently.
4 rigs.
Yeah.
How the heck did you decide to start your own drilling company?
So it's always an idea, as a driller, you always think about the possibilities of having your own, but it's the risks, the stress, everything, and figuring out how to come up with the cash and be able to operate. So me being out west in California drilling, that wasn't my, area that I wanted to be. So I was trying to figure out how to come back and basically start my own. And I knew if I could get the equipment, the work would come along. I had a good name in the industry. I drilled for a lot of big pipeline companies. So the struggle was finding the equipment and being able to break off and then basically just tackling as much work as I could get. And starting it with a very small budget. It wasn't a large budget. So our first year, well, our first 5 months, starting the company, we did 42 ground beds in the first 5 months, and it was just me and one guy. So we hit the ground running strong.
How did you grow from there? So you go from you and one guy and 42 ground beds. Now you have 4 rigs. I'm assuming those rigs aren't all used.
Yeah, so all those rigs right now. So there's 3 new rigs. I got 122 model, 223s, and then the OG rig is a 2008. So yeah, so the biggest thing was the workflow, right? So you got to have work to run these rigs. So these rigs are very expensive just to sit around, and you got to have personnel to run it. So finding personnel, you know, everybody that I knew in the industry were now my customers. So it's not like I could just pull a guy from a customer, because then I'm just biting the hand that feeds me. So I went a totally different direction that I didn't want to go, which I hired a bunch of young guys. So all my staff is probably under the age of 28 years old, and 3 of my drillers are 22 years old.
That's excellent.
So
I love the fact you say I hired a bunch of young guys. Dude, you're a young guy. I'm
yeah,
43 in this industry, and often I'm still called the kid. I'm going to go from the kid to the old man, and it's awesome to see you do this. Um, how's the team working out?
great, man. It's a huge shocker on the success of my guys right now, on how much we've grown, and how much we've grown together as upcome of the company. Um, it's just great to see that, when we pull up to a location and the first impression that these guys step out, they're a bunch of young kids. You know, you basically say, but that's the first thing these inspectors say, like, oh man, there's young guys showing up on location. I know where this is going. And then they go out there and perform, and that inspector's just raving about these guys. So it's awesome to get that feedback. And two, it's good to bring up a younger generation into the drilling industry, because when I was coming up, all my drillers were 50 years old, late 40s, some are even close to 60. uh, and they weren't going to teach you, anything. That was their ride to the very end. So it's good to see that we got guys coming in that came from the water well industry, and then training them and working with them and getting them to adapt to our industry. It's been a blessing.
How do you guys share knowledge amongst yourselves? Exactly what you just said about, the average age of a driller right now is 58 years old. The statistics is 45 to 50% of our entire knowledge-based trained drilling industry will be retired by 2030.
Yeah. So the benefit, just as me, right? I'm a driller by background, so I'm not just an owner. I can still go out there and drill wells if I needed to. So the benefit of me is I get out there with these guys, go through them, share the knowledge, and then basically walk through the steps that I've done, and basically tell them, take all the information that I give you and make it your own. Um, just don't take what I say, let it go through one ear and out the other. I've been doing this, 9 years now. I still got a lot to learn. So take any driller that you work around, watch how they operate, see what they do, take that knowledge and make it your own. You ain't got to copy, because you're never going to copy a driller. Every driller is different in this industry. You got some drillers that drilled on Mars. You got some drilling in Alaska. They just they everybody thinks they know it all, but in this industry, you never know it all. It's a consistently learning curve for our industry.
It is tough. I don't know how often I have to mentally say, check my drilling ego, check my drilling ego. Some of it we need in order to be confident, when you're standing on that platform and making that microsecond decision that can change the outcome of the day. So, how many years now have you been in business?
We're coming up on our 2-year mark in June.
2 years, 4 rigs.
Yeah.
And these are, I'll throw it out there. I've seen the LinkedIn and I'm very impressed. You're running V140s.
Yeah.
How do you lay out your job site? What was your ideal plan from coming from multiple different companies and working around the country? What did you want for tools to be successful?
So, a mud system for one, because I didn't have a mud system at the last corporation I worked with. Everything was portable pit. So, knowing starting this, I knew it was just going to be me and one guy starting out. So, the less equipment, the less manual labor we had to do, it was just us two, the better we were off, we were. So, and we can control our fluids, our stuff on a rig, our piping, we're not washing out so many fittings because we're controlling all what goes back through the system. And then mainly it's just the right bits, the pumps, everything comes down to it, which we didn't have a big pump in the very beginning. We were running off a 3x4 centrifugal. And that's all we had. So we were tackling 500-600 footers, 12-inch diameters, pushing that rig every bit it could. But yeah, having a great mud system, a good rig, a good, hand that supports you is always a key to what's going to make you successful in the field.
So going back to a young crew, when somebody gets hired in, how do you recruit them? Is it, hey, come be a driller in the cathodic industry? What is your process of going from new guy in the field to being able to operate a rig?
So basically, I'll take a guy, either if they're not in any type of drilling industry, or I'll give you an example. I got one guy has never seen a rig in his life, never been around it. First day on his job, I'll never forget this. I tell him to get up there and screw the plug into the sub to pull the bit off the rod box. In his mind, all he did was put the plug in to the sub and never screwed it in. And I went to go pick up, and that thing slung out the rod box. So taking a guy like that, and now he's one of my top drillers, and he broke out within 7 months and thrown him onto a rig. That's basically that's what I've been working with, is guys that have no idea about the industry, or they have some little knowledge, taking through them, working with them, training them, working, day by day processes on different things you're going to do daily, learning how to mix fluids, maintenance equipment, basically just go through that whole line and let them get up there, work with them on the controls, teach them about what's coming out of the hole, what situations do you have down the hole, when you're running the gravel, when you're running your sands, or you lose circulation. Just basically work with those guys, and everybody says they don't want to deal with those guys, but sometimes those guys, are your hidden dimes. They're going to perform. You just got to work with them, show them your knowledge. Let them work with another driller. I had another guy that came on with me when I started the company. He's been around the industry 7 years, and so he already had drilling experience. He got to work with him, and then when we got the second rig came in, I pulled him, and he was with me for the next 4 or 5 months till we were able to get another guy in here, get him trained up. So it's awesome to kind of look back at that individual and see how much he has transitioned over a year and a half of being with me.
I like that. How do you deal with the travel with, having young crews?
Usually the younger guys don't really have a issue with traveling. They're more excited about bouncing from location and, all over Texas. Um, it's usually the older ones that want to be closer to home. They mostly have families and stuff. But a lot of our work is, South Texas, so we're always within a couple hours of the house. So if we finish up on a Friday, we're headed home, taking a couple days off. But yeah, uh, traveling hasn't really been too much of an issue. I'm sure later on in the years it might become.
In 2 years, 4 rigs, you've obviously had some tough jobs. How did you overcome one of those tougher jobs with all the stakes of equipment and payroll and needing to get to the next schedule?
Yeah, so I would say like in the very beginning we had one rig and we had a transfer case give out on me within like the first 3 months of us operating. That rig was out almost 4 weeks, and it was only supposed to be in the shop a week. So I would communicate to my customer. He would communicate to his customer because we're a third-party subcontractor for these Cathodic protection companies. So they're passing the word. I'm updating them. As soon as the shop updates me, they give me a new date. I send the update along. Well, eventually, those customers are only going to wait so long. They got to schedule and meet. And if you're not, meeting their schedule, you're unreliable. So that was a big struggle in the very beginning. And that's what drove me to get to that second rig, get to that third rig. That way, if something changes, you can move a rig around. If not, or move the schedule a little bit to adapt to these customers versus with one rig, you're just sitting there in the water. You're stuck. You're not going nowhere. Your customers are getting pissed off at you. Um, you're burning through cash because these guys, you got to take care of your guys while that rig's down. So you got payroll coming out. You got to cover a transfer case, and when you're struggling in the very beginning with cash flow, that's a big hit. I'll look back at it. That was some hard times going through that, and you got your customer that's calling you, and he's furious with you because you're unreliable. You can't give him a hard set date, and you're just trying to get the rig out as quick as possible to get back to location to start tackling these wells.
So last question, you're at 4 rigs. What's next? What's the plans? You gonna become a North American drilling company, a global drilling company? At 33, you got a lot of years to be pretty big influence on our industry.
Right now it's mainly I would say the doors are always open. If it makes sense, we're going. Right now we got rig 5 that's scheduled to be in at the end of June. So we are we have a lot of wells that we're trying to get to this year. Last year we did around 342 ground beds. First part of the year we only had 2 rigs. The second part of the year we have 4 rigs, and we also lost a rig for 2 months. We had a rig get hit inside of a plant and pushed a derrick over. One of the new rigs pushed a derrick over about a foot. Hydrovac truck came in and caught the top of the derrick. So we were down that rig trying to keep up with the other 3 rigs. Luckily, one of my customers I had a good relationship with had a rig sitting, so we took over their rig to handle their ground beds, and with our personnel run their equipment to get by we end up getting our rig back at the end of the year, and we fired that thing up too. So we were running 5 rigs in December, just to catch up.
That is fantastic. And again, it's rewarding in our industry as we go to the different conventions and whatnot. This whole idea that nobody in their youth wants to be in this industry anymore, and we're just gonna have to keep going on with the old guys when you're about to become a 5-rig company and you're being successful, and it's great. Do you have any advice for anybody else that's young that would want to buy a rig and get into industrial drilling?
Just to go do it, man. Anything's possible. I would say nothing's not possible, man. If you put your mind to it, you can come up with a good business plan. You can build your name in the industry. The work's there. You just got to get it.
Are you hiring?
Yes, I'm always hiring. We are consistently growing. So yes, I am hiring.
So how do people get a hold of you then?
You can find us on Facebook or Instagram, Innov8 Drilling, or you can look us up on Indeed. So.
Well, excellent. Thanks for coming on today. You're a busy guy. You have to be a busy guy with 4 rigs, about to be 5 rigs. We appreciate your time today, and you are welcome anytime you want to come on and share some knowledge. It's very awesome to show our industry, and I've always thought this. Jake Fletcher, that does the leadership columns and whatnot, he is one of my mentors, and he is in his early 30s, and our industry can be more about we're drillers. We're not old driller and young driller, or new owner, old owner. Like, we should just share knowledge and talk about successes and failures as they come along. And I appreciate you coming on today and doing them.
No, thanks for having me on.
Well, excellent. Thanks, Matt. That was a great story, and it's encouraging to see what can be done when you're motivated and building a team and a legacy company. And I wish you many, many more years of great success and building more drillers and more company owners, and keep it up. And with that, the Driller is launching our new series, Emerging Drillers, which is our model of success in the trades with drilling, science, project management. We want to talk to drilling professionals that are less than 40 years old and have just been promoted to driller or project manager or lead scientist on site. If you're involved in drilling, from water to geotechnical to geothermal to mining to caissons constructions, or somebody that has excelled at this at a young age, we want to hear from them. The next generation needs to see themselves operating heavy equipment or in the important scientific and engineering work those operators execute or make possible. They need to see the connection between groundwater and often the water from their taps. They need to know drilling can provide the geothermal heating and cooling that helps solve green energy. Our youth needs to know that drilling delivers the raw materials from everything from mobile phones to EV batteries. And they can be part of it all. You can help by nominating these great new professionals in our industry. We have such a big age gap, and we're wondering how we should recruit. Well, Emerging Drillers, our new series, is one way to do that. Stay tuned to see the site launch for nominations page and all the great stories that we can tell. Thank you for joining the Driller Newscast. Have a safe and productive week. Check out thedriller.com for all the great news and content. And it's going to be very quickly the 4th of July, so let's work smart and safe. Thank you.